Hello and welcome to Almost Solitaire. Today I'm gonna check out this game. It's a CDG called 1918 Brother Against Brother, or Veli Veljeä vastaan is its name in Finnish. It's made by Antti Lehmusjärvi and it's produced and published by Linden Lake Games and Ludi Creations. So as I said, this is a CTG depicting the war between the white and red forces in Finland 1918 during the civil war, during the winter and spring of 1918. You probably recognize this guy if you have played maybe other games from Finnish history. I mean, this is not that known to the general public, I believe, out there in the world, as it is a kind of a periphery thing happening during the First World War. But you might recognize this guy. This is Mannerheim, who is the commander-in-chief for the white forces or the right-wing forces. And he's also, the commander-in-chief later on in the more famous Winter War and Continuation War, or actually throughout the Second World War on the Finnish side. I'm not 100% sure who this guy is, but it could be actually the leader of the Reds in Finland, Kullervo Manner. I'm not sure, but it could be him. Anyway, let's check this game out. I bought this last summer, so I haven't even punched it yet or anything. So we're just gonna check out the contents first of all. I have read through the rules. So I will, later on, we can go through the rules a bit just to nail down the basic rules of and the concepts of the game before we start. We have a map board, of course. Gonna also check out that later. We have something called a historical variant to the rules. I'm probably gonna play with this, but let's go through that as well after we have checked out the rules. One cool thing with this game is that it has a rule book in English and also in Finnish, and every one of these charts and all has a English and also a Finnish side. We also have a leaflet here with some, quick information about this war. As I said, it's probably not that much known about it out there. I have done some reading about it many years ago, so I have the basic, flow of the war, I believe, inside my head. So I remember, the broad strokes of the conflict. Anyway, here we have it on Finnish and it's in English here as well. So we could pretty much, in short, just go through what it's all about. So this is, the war started in the 27th of January in 1918 and went all through to May in 1918. And the country was pretty much divided in, first of all, of course, politically, with the Reds being communists and social democrats, and then we had the right wing or the whites that, they actually won the election in the autumn of 1917, I believe it was, but there was a lot of social unrest after that, after those elections, and also before the war there were, there were conflicts and fights, and people even died in some of the kind of skirmishes already happening before the war, when different groups armed themselves to, claiming they were keeping public order and all that. And then there were different armed groups, red side and white side, that claimed to be the entity to keep order, maybe in the same city. And when those clashed, there were people killed. One thing about these groups, they were really not good. There were not that many arms in Finland at that point. So, I mean, very few had rifles. Others just grabbed from what they had at home. There were some pistols, there were some hunting rifles and all that. So really, I mean, all in all, kind of very unprofessional soldiers, if you want, or militia more. But in the end of January, things has come to the point there where a war will break out. The Reds saw it as a revolution, and the Whites saw it as a rebellion against the legal government, of course. So that was a clash. There was also another division, more than the political one, and it was pretty much, about the geo in Finland. So the southern parts were aligned to the red side, and the northern parts and maybe central parts of Finland more to the white side. So there was a distinct kind of a front line that we will see on the map as well when the war begins. So the first month of the war, which is pretty much February, both sides tried to arm themselves. They tried to organize their troops and also get rid of enemy troops that they had, behind their lines, because both the whites and the reds had kind of what we call it, maybe nests of enemies behind their lines. So in southern Finland, there were some communities that were, aligned more to the white side, and in north there were some on the red side, especially cities where there was industries and other more, maybe let's say, worker intense communities. So that was the first aim of the both sides, to get rid of those enemies within their area of control, so to speak. And also they needed to arm themselves. So the red side had support from Soviet Russia, so they got rifles and even heavier equipment from there that we will see also in the game. And they also, especially in the beginning of the war, there were quite a lot of Russian soldiers in Finland at that point. And this was they were of course supporting the red side, but also the white side gained some some benefits out of that, because they did disarm these Russian units that were located on the white side of the areas of control, you could say. So the white troops or militias disarmed these red or Russian garrisons that were spread out in different cities along the north, and they got rifles through that. Also, the white side got a good bunch of rifles from Germany that came in to a city called Vasa, where the Senate has relocated from Helsinki when they had to flee from the southern Finland. So yeah, all in all, February was not that intense in the battles. There were battles happening, but both sides tried to consolidate their positions, getting armed, and making plans for the future of the war. Then came March, and at that point, I believe both sides, the Reds started with more offensive operations toward the north. They wanted to cut some important railway lines over in the north. But in general, well, they had some successes, but in general, the big red offensive failed. They tried again, but the whites, even though their lines were really thin in the beginning, they held pretty much everywhere. And at the same time, there was something called the Jäger movement in Finland. This was Finnish volunteers heading over to the German army. They had some battles within on the Eastern Front for Germany. They were I think there was a strength of a battalion. These Jägers, the Finnish Jägers in Germany, and of course it's not, they were just not volunteers in Germany. The secret purpose of this unit was to, get the proper education and training for this battalion, and then bring them back home to Finland, where they would participate in this civil war and overthrow the Reds eventually. So that was the main plan, at least from the Finnish point of view. There were some Germans reluctant to send them back to Finland. They wanted this battalion kept in Germany, or actually over against Russians or Soviets to battle. But they came back. I think they started pouring in March, and we will see those in the game, of course. Most of those guys were, placed in different white side units to act as officers and NCOs, and they also started to create these Jäger battalions and regiments, I believe, even that were to, be led by these Jägers and be more efficient than these initial kind of militia guards that they had, white guards, or I think it's called civil guards in this game. Civil guards is the name they use. So so slowly the white side started to be stronger and stronger, and the whites started their own offensive. At the same time, there were plans to getting proper German troops into Finland to help out the white side, and that happened actually later on in the war. So I think there might be some, here's, I think this is a picture of German troops in Finland. Anyway, it was a whole division that came to a port city called Hanko in Finland, in southern Finland, where they did disembark and made their way all to Helsinki and took it. And it was really, kind of an easy task for the Germans, because both the red and white side were so, the German soldiers was a totally different class. They were professional soldiers, with good education and training and battle-hardened guys. This was the German Baltic Sea Division. So under von der Goltz's command, and so the Reds really didn't have a chance against the Germans when they approached Helsinki. So they took it, and eventually the Red resistance collapsed. They started to flee eastwards, many to Russia. They made some, defenses still, and there was one more major city left to be taken that was in the Red control. It's called Viipuri, also very known city from the Winter War and Continuation War, where we saw some action. But that was also taken eventually, not by the Germans, but the proper white Finnish forces. And pretty much by that, the war ended in May. So this leaflet also has some nice statistics and info about this. If you ever are about to buy this game, this has this leaflet is really cool, and also the statistics here. So this is interesting. If you look at the forces here, the whites and the reds, so white guards had somewhere between 18 and 19,000 men, exactly the same for the red forces. So really evenly even forces there. Then we have Germany, that's a division, so something about 14 to 15,000 men. And the Reds got the Russian support by some 7 to 10,000, and that's mainly in the beginning of the war, not that much during the late months. We also had something what's called a Swedish brigade actually, but it was more like a Swedish battalion. It said here like 500 to 1,000 men of Swedish volunteers on the white side. We have some leaders here, Mannerheim, you know him. Von der Goltz is a German. Then we have casualties. So on the white side, there were about 3,500 whites killed in action, 1,500 executed by the Reds then, of course, 46 missing, that's not that much. Deaths in as a prisoner of war 4, it's noted here, 78,000 wounded, and the Germans lost about just about 500 killed in action. On the red hand side, we had 5,000 killed, so more than the white, and we have 7,300 executed. This was more, after the war, basically. They had these really vast, big prison camps where people were executed. A lot of them starved to death and died by, diseases and all that. So as you can see here, first of all, it says 1,700 missing, and then, 11,652 prisoner of war deaths. So a lot of people perished in those prison camps. We had something about 10 to 12,000 wounded. Russians took some 700 to 900 kills. I mean, as I told you in the beginning, when the white side were disarming these Russian units, some of them just gave up, and some of them actually did resist. So there were some Russian deaths there. And in that initial Red push towards north, the initial offensive they did in March, there were some Russians also. I think there were some naval infantry of the Russians involved in those initial offensives. And it's also said 1,500 Russians executed. This is something I didn't really know about. I wonder when this happened and why, but a lot of Russians actually executed by the white side during the war. So that's the leaflet. Sorry for taking that time, but I think it's cool to, have some kind of a background before we start gaming this. We have a setup table listing the initial setup that we will do, and also a list of the reinforcements. So we're going to keep this close. And as I said, I haven't even punched this game yet, so we're going to just have a close look at the counter sheets here. It's 2 of them, kind of sitting together. Oops. So we have the base forces are these red guards. It says PK, it means Punakaarti in Finnish, meaning red guard. Then we had something called SK for the whites. I think that might be Suojeluskaarti or Suojeluskunta or something like that, meaning the civil guards. We have some control markers and activated markers. There's the white ones on the reverse side. Then we have, the reds also have some armor trains, 4 of them. These are the units with the highest values in the game. By the way, the first number is combat, the second is movement. So the regular militias or guards, they are 2 in combat and 3 in movement, both for the red and white side. These armor trains have a 5-5, so they are really great actually. Then we have these Jägers that I talked about. So these are Finns trained in Germany in kind of light infantry tactics, right? So they have 4 in combat and 4 in movement, really efficient troops. Then we have the proper Germans here, and these are really heavy as well, 5 combat and 4 in movement. We have some kind of fortifications markers here, and we have also a turn marker. So really quick, let's take a look at the back side of the counter sheet as well. So we have also reduced sides, so when the unit takes a hit, we flip them. That's one hit, and then they are taken away if it takes another hit. Pretty basic there. Then we have a Finnish rules booklet. We have 2 dice, wooden dice by the way, and we have also a cool thing. We have actually 2 sets of cards, one Finnish and one English. So that's what we will use. This is a CGG, as I said, so I'm gonna play this with the CGG solo system, even though there are no, rules for this game in the CGG system, but I would just use the general rules for it, and I think we're gonna manage with that. So what I'm gonna do now is to punch the cards. I'm gonna sleeve these, the counters, and sleeve the cards and do the setup, and we can look at the map after the setup and have some rules discussions and then start playing the game. So I hope you will continue and look at these videos, because I think this might be a really interesting game actually. So see you in a while. I'm gonna do the setup and preparations. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the components and the rules of the game. So the game is played for 5 turns. It is a CGG, a card-driven game, so we will play 8 cards per turn. Each turn is actually a month, except for turn 1, which is only a 3 card play of a turn. So it's a shorter one because pretty much the war started in 27th of January. So at the start of each month, you pretty much reshuffle all the cards you have left that are not removed from the game, and you also add some cards to each. I mean, they have their own card stacks, both sides, I mean, and you add the upcoming month's cards to your draw deck, basically. So we start with the January, which is 3 cards each, and then when we reach February, we add these to the draw stack, and so forth. So in May, both only get 1 additional card to the draw deck. So each turn consists of playing a card. I think the white player always starts every turn. So the red player is only, or always, I'd say, the second player in each of the turns. Then you play the actions of the card. You can also play it, or basically you can play it as an event or an action. Then you do movement, and then you do battles with the units that had been ordered in this turn, or for this card rather than the turn actually. So the game board, we have it set up here with all the units that should be in play from the start. So here we have the turn market sheet, or the turn sequence here, and you can see there's some symbols here. There's a train symbol and a machine gun symbol here. This means the red player will get a card that may add some armored trains to his forces, and here there's a chance that the Germans will actually land with a division and participate in the war. Then we have some notes for the combats here, and here we have combat tables. You can note that we have 2 different combat tables. We have attacking unit battle table and defending unit battle table. So the defending table is a bit more deadly. It's always easier at least in these times, to defend and attack, especially when you have these guys who are very untrained, militias. That's very limited training. And I mean, some of the soldiers here, they have never fired a real round before were sent to the front. Some were just having learning how to reload a rifle, but not really shooting with any real ammunition. So very meager training, and also in tactics and all that. So attacking was really hard. And also, remember, this is Finland and this is winter, so there was a lot of snow. So it was difficult to advance quickly in that deep snow. So attacking is really hard in this game. So you have a kind of a less efficient attacking table compared to the defending ones. Otherwise, as you can see, it's a point-to-point system here. So we have what they call towns. These should be towns and cities, I guess, but it's called towns in the rules. And each town has some kind of a communication link to another town, and either it's this brown reddish line. This is railroad, which is the main way of moving troops, and also actually through what you prefer to attack via those lines. The solid black lines are roads, and they are okay, but not. They are more expensive to move, and there's some limitations in the attacks, I believe, through those as well. So the other ones, these are kind of ordinary towns. Then we have strategic towns, which are these octagons. We have 5 of them. So from north to south, these are really important. So we have, up in the north, we have Oulu. Then we have Vasa, which is actually the capital of the White Senate. They had to flee from Helsinki up to Vasa, where they have now established their government. And this is actually from the beginning the only strategic city that's in control of the white side. Then we have Tampere down here, which is a real, it's a really important town for the Reds. Lots of Red support in that city. It's an industrial city. We have Helsinki, the capital, which is under Red control. You can also see that we have some fortifications in Helsinki as well. And then we have one more, and that's Viipuri, which is over here. Viipuri or Viipuri. Also in Red control. So as you can see, 4 of the cities, strategic cities or towns rather, are under Red control, and 1 white. And these are, as I said, important for 2 reasons: for reinforcements and also for victory conditions, which we will look at in a sec. Then we have German landing sites. These are the more major ports in Finland. So up in the north, there are none that the Germans will use. I mean, there are of course ports up here as well, but these are the ones that the Germans can use for their landing from April and forward. So as you can see, there are several options that the Germans can use actually. Historically, they landed in Hanko down here, and marched all the way and took Helsinki, and then they actually move northwards. I think they were aiming at Lahti eventually. So Helsinki was actually captured by the Germans. The other towns were captured by the whites. Finnish white forces. Then we have, as I said, the roads, the black lines. They cost 2 movement points to march along. Railroads are 1 movement points per city, basically, from city to city. Then we have initial front line. That's these red circle dotted line here. So that's the front line from the beginning, and it's important because when you place reinforcements, you can only place them. The Reds can only place their units south of the initial front line and in their control, and the Whites on the northern side of the front line. Then we have initial placements of units. As you see, I already placed them, but there's some indications here. Here it says you get a full strength red units, and here you have a half strength white unit. So as you see, we have placed these. So from the beginning, there's only these either full strength or half strength red guards or white guards. There's no Jaegers or Germans or armored trains from the beginning. Only these militia units, you could say. Plus, we have, as I said, 2 fieldworks or fortifications. We have one in Helsinki on the red side. We also have here in Vilppula, we have one for the white side. This was a really important place to hold for the whites. The front line went, actually, if you see, there's some water just south of Vilppula, this lake here. So the Reds were holding the southern shore here, and the Whites the northern, and there were a lot of fighting going on over that bridge over there. The Reds tried to gain ground from there. They sent some trains over with explosive and armored trains and all that, so a lot of things happened there, but the Whites managed to hold it, and eventually, yeah, they went on the attack here. But that's more history than rules, of course. So that's it. If we look at the units then, well, let's look at them in here, or actually the cards first. So if you have played CTGs, you will recognize how this works pretty much. We have this is called the, let's see, action points. So this means if I would play this card, I can choose to play it as for the action points 4, or for the event, which is described here and what happens. So I need to choose every time I play a card if I would do it for action points or for the event. And if there is an asterisk, as here in the event, if I play this as an event, I need to remove this card permanently from the game. If there isn't an asterisk and I play it as an event, it may still be played again and again and again when it gets reshuffled into the draw pile. If you play it for the action points, you never remove it from the game. You just reshuffle it when needed. And basically in this, the action points works that one action point can activate one town. No matter how many units there are there, it's 1 point. So I could order, for instance, Tampere for 1 point. That would activate both these units. I could activate these, and maybe this. That would be 4 for the 4 points. For stacking of these units, I can have 3 units in a town. 2 of them may be armored trains, no more than 2. Fortifications doesn't affect stacking; they are just there, and I think they get destroyed if captured, actually. So that's basically it for those, for the cards. There are also some historical notes here. We can check out those when we play the cards eventually. Otherwise, the white player has 3 types of units: the civil guards, and I think I said it already, but this is at the combat factor and then the movement factor. Jaegers 4/4, Germans of von der Goltz division 5 combat, 4 in movement. The red players have 2 units. These red guards, 2 combat, 3 movement, and the armored train 5 for combat and 5 movement. And then we have every unit has 2 steps. So first it's full strength or fully manned, as it said here. and then it has a reversed side when you have taken a hit, and then it's partially manned. So when you do a combat, you inflict losses in these tables. So for instance, if you get a 2, you need to reduce the other player with 2 steps, or you do it for your own units actually. So you can flip a unit and remove it for 2 steps, so you can flip 2 units to meet the loss need here after the combat. So that's about the units. Is there anything else to be said by those? Let's see. Armored trains, of course, they can only move through railways, for sure. Maximum numbers, I said that, only 2 armored trains in one town. They are always in supply. Jägers, if a Jäger participates in attack, okay, so there's a rule: if you attack through a road, these are bad. These are not, as I said, it's winter and the roads were not in super condition in 1918 in Finland. So if you attack by a road, you need to subtract 2 from your roll, from your attack die. So that sucks really much. But if you have a Jäger somewhere including attack, I mean, you can attack from several cities into one city, for instance. And if there's at least one Jäger unit involved, you don't get that penalty because they can coordinate the attack. And the Jäger unit doesn't need to attack by road themselves. So just the Jäger is involved in the combat, you don't get that penalty. Then we have the German units. Same thing there, they don't subtract 2 from the road attacks. Any red units that fight against German units get -2 to the attack and defense rolls. Really big penalty for the reds there. It's just because the quality was so, I mean, between the Germans and these militia units, it's just 2 different worlds of military units. Any red units that attack against German units receive 1 column shift left in attack, so they also get a lesser good table to roll on. German units may move after battle even if partially manned. Okay, so if you have a combat and you force your enemy to retreat, you can move into that town. But if you are partially, if you took a hit, or if you were a half manned unit from start, those cannot advance actually after combat. But Germans can. German units are always in supply. Control, so pretty much all the towns south of the initial front line are in red control, except where there are white units. As you can see, there are some behind the lines units here. These guys were really pressed. They tried to, to move northwards through the front line and get to their own troops. But some of them were successful, but most of them weren't actually. So eventually they have to flee out into the islands outside of the shore here. Actually, these guys went all the way to Åland, Ahvenanmaa or Åland here. So they had to flee. They didn't really get the chance to get back. Actually, these guys eventually came back to their own lines through Åland and then through Sweden up to Tornio actually in the end. Just as a side note, but so what I wanted to say is that you have these control markers. So if I would move from, for instance, Kirkkonummi here to Karja, I place a control marker here because the white player was the last to control this, so it's still in white control, and that can affect supply lines and retreat paths and so forth. Then we have the tokens with the A, that's activation tokens. It's just you can mark who you have been activated this turn. What else? Playing cards, I think we know that. I might need to get back to the rules when I play, because I have read through them quickly once and I hope I get it. Movement is not that, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. As said, 2 per road, 1 for railroad. Yeah, if a player moves extremely you are controlled by the other player but has no enemy units, the first player conquers that turn. Okay. Armored trains, only railways. You can, by the way, move, even if you have a fully stacked town of 3, you can move through them and overstack temporarily, but you can never end your movement overstacking. I think the same thing goes when you get reinforcements. You cannot overstack at that point. You need to have room in the city or the towns for your reinforcements. Battles. Okay, sequence of battle. The attacker selects which units and the town they will attack. So you activated units may attack enemies. You need to only attack with activated units. You cannot activate. You cannot. I mean, this is kind of a question that arose when I read the rules. But here's how I will play it. For instance, if I would activate one unit, let's say I activate this guy, move them here, and then attack. Only this guy would attack because this guy wasn't activated in this turn. Sounds a bit weird, but I can see in the rules why this guy would be able to attack. It says when the movement phase is over, activated units may attack enemy units that are next to them. So that's how I'm gonna play it. So the attacker selects units and the town they will attack. The players calculate their attack and defense values, and it's pretty much just adding up all the attack, or actually combat factors you have on both sides. Then we check if there's any modifiers, and then we just roll. So let's say I have 3 in attack, I would roll here. So I would need to get at least a 3 to inflict a hit on the defender. Let's say the defender had 2 points, they roll on this column, and they would also need a 3 to inflict an hit on the attacker. Then you remove the points they have suffered in combat loss. And then it says, if the attacker caused at least 1 damage point more than the defender, the latter must withdraw. So if you get 1 more damage to the defender, they need to retreat. But if you have, I think it said here, yeah, in strategic towns and towns with a field fortifications, the defender retreats only if attacker inflicts at least 2 damage points more than the defender. So you need to do more, inflict more hits there to force the enemy to retreat. And then the attack may move fully manned units into the town, except Germans. They can go with also half-step units in the advance of the combat. That's basically how it works for combat. And then there's cards that can modify combat and other stuff. But in general, I understand that it's really, you would need to have more troops in the attack because the defense table is so much more deadly. There's one more thing. You can see also in the combat loss here that there's at some points you get an asterisk, this red asterisk between or after the loss number. That means that you need to take 1 step from a special units if there are any in the combat. So for the reds that would be armored trains, and for the whites it would be either a Jaeger or a German unit. Then we have, I think we went through the field fortifications. So first of all, the benefit of those, as we said, you need to get 2 more damage points to the defender to force them to retreat from a fortification. And also you have these column shifts on both tables when there are fortifications. Then we have the supply rules. At the end of each round, that means the month, players check their unit supply lines. A town and all units stationed there receive supplies if the town is connected to any of the player's own strategic towns by road or rail. Strategic towns are always fully supplied. So pretty much you check that you can draw a line to one of your strategic cities. So for instance, these white guys here are in trouble from the beginning, right? They would start to die off pretty soon if they don't break through anywhere, because they cannot really trace a line to their strategic city here. So this will be a big problem for the whites here, and also the reds here. These guys are in a strategic city, so they are always in supply. So this is a real stronghold for the reds. But these guys are in trouble from the beginning. So the whites would really only need to hold these against the reds to these guys starting to starve. But you of course you might also want to attack them to get rid of these, because they could of course attack here, and then suddenly you have the reds in Pieksämäki, meaning they have cut off pretty much the east-west railroad here. So you might maybe want as a white player to attack. So in that sense, when you're starting to reach the end of the month, you want to check that your supplies are in order. Because what happens if you don't have supply then? You must hand over towns with no supply lines and no units to the opponent. I mean, if there are a town with no unit in it, but you are in the kind of enemy territory and you cannot trace a supply line, then it will be handed over, or the control will go to the other side. All fully manned units, meaning in full strength with no supply line, becomes partially manned. So you need to flip all the units that are full strength into half strength units if you don't get supply. If you are already in half strength, like these guys, there's no further penalty. So these will remain in half strength. So eventually you need to attack and kill them to get them. And it says the reason here is in 1918 troops were usually able to acquire at least some food and other necessary items from the surrounding areas. If a town doesn't have a supply line, it cannot receive reinforcements, which is the next rule. But first of all, armored trains and Germans may not, they are always in supply. They were handled differently. The trains had their own supply and the Germans had kind of their own supply. That way they moved with the division, with the units themselves, so no problem there. So reinforcements then. So at the beginning of each turn except January, the players receive the following reinforcements. White player. In February, 1 Jaeger unit and civil guards. Now here is the importance of these strategic towns, because the white player gets 3 times the number of strategic towns under the player's control as the civil guards. So from the start, they only have 1, so that would be 3 civil guard units. Would they have 2 towns in their control, they would get 6 units instead. So for each of these cities they control, they get 3 civil guard units in full strength. So that's really important. In March, it's the same thing for the civil guards, but they get 3 Jaeger units. Same thing in April. And then we also will include these German units land in Finland card. So the Germans will start to appear as well in April. In May, only civil guards, and it's again 3 times the number of strategic towns. The Jägers must be placed in Vasa or Oulu, so here or here. So these needs to be defended for the whites, for they are important cities. But the civil guards can be placed in any town that is located north of the initial front line controlled by the white player. Again, you can only place the white units over here, even if you have started to conquer towns from the reds, right? The red player then, in February, they will get a card that makes them to call in armored trains. We will get back to that when we reach February. And they will also get red guards 4 times the number of strategic towns. So if they have, if they will hold the same number of towns they have from the beginning, would be 4 of them, 1, 2, 3, and 4, they will get 12 red units, and that's a huge amount. So that's a big problem for the whites. They have, well, they're kind of weaker in the beginning, but they need to still to conquer these towns from the reds, or they will just grow and grow, you know. Then in March they will get, but it's only February that's this really, you know, a surge of red units. In March they will get 2 times the number of towns and 1 armored train automatically. In April 2 times, and May 2 times. The armored trains must be placed in Tampere, Helsinki, or Viipuri. That's Tampere, Helsinki, or Viipuri. Red guards can be placed in any town that is located south of the initial front line, controlled by the red player, and connected to the supply line. All the units enter the game fully manned, yes. And you need to have room for stacking as well. There are also some reinforcements added as events. Reinforcements must always be placed in a town with a functioning supply. So the limitation with placing reinforcements on their own side of the front line does not apply to reinforcement that enter the game because of event cards. It's only these that has this restriction. Reinforcements you get from events may end up in other towns as well. But I think you need supply though. Okay, the end of the game. How to win the game then? So the red player wins immediately if they control Vasa. So if they get this town, no matter if the whites have conquered some other strategic towns, they win immediately. So the white cannot afford to lose Vasa, because that's where the government sits. And we check that at the end of the white player's turn. So the white player, if the reds conquer it, they have 1 chance to reconquer it. And I think this is the end of the month you check it. Because that's the turn, right? I believe so. The game ends when the white player wins. The game ends and the white player wins if they control 4 strategic towns at the end of any of the red players' turns by the end of April. So the game goes to May, but if you already at the end of April control 4 strategic towns as the white, you win. If the game continues until May, the white player wins if they control all 5 strategic towns. If the red player has even 1 strategic town at the end of May, they win. This means that the red player has done much better than their historical counterpart. Okay, so if the war drags out to May, then the white need to take all the strategic towns basically. And before starting, I also want to check out this one, because okay, if I would play, you know, player to player, I think these rules are enough, because then it's more of an even game, I believe. But since I play Solitaire, I want to play this historical variant, which will make the game much harder for the reds. But I want to, you know, more simulate and see how desperate and bad it looked for the Reds, especially when the Germans arrived. So I'm gonna add these rules. So the first rule is training for the civil guards officers. This is for the white side. So starting from March, the white player gets +1 to every die roll in combat, that is. If any German units participate in an attack, these rules does not apply. Use the German units bonus instead. Okay, so German military superiority. The German units land in Finland cards makes 10 German units available on the Gulf of Finland. So if you go with the standard rules, you only get 6, I think, 6 German units. But if you play with the historical variant, you will get 10, which is the whole division. The whole Baltic Sea division. And I'm gonna do that. If the German player participates in a battle, the white player receives +1 column to the right. This applies to both attack and defense rolls. So every time a German is participating in combat, the white player always gets 1 shift in defense and attack to the right. If any German units participate in attack, the white player also get +2 to the attack roll. So this is really deadly. So they just, yeah, pretty much wipe out the red units in front of them, which happened historically. These units apply in addition to German unit special rules used in the ordinary game. So these are just additions to the bonuses already there. You know, with Germans always in supply, they can advance with half strength units and so forth. Okay, so to start the game then, as I said, every turn is 8 cards, or every month is 8 cards, except for January, which is 3 cards. And there is only 3 cards for both sides in January, so I will just play these pretty much as I want, not playing with the CDG solo system. But as soon as we reach February, I will start using the solo system to see what cards we can activate and which not. So that's the plan. And then when we reach February and April, there are some special rules happening with the cards that I will bring that up when it happens, basically. So the white player always starts. So I think we are ready actually to start the game. So we can start with actually, hold on. I'm gonna check a thing, and then we can see what cards we have in the hands before we start play.